Hey, Cade. So today's conversation is going to be discussing money with your children. And I'll make the same disclosures I did in our prior conversation with money before marriage. Is a lot of what we're going to talk about today. I'm not claiming I have all of the answers. A lot of this is going to be you and I discussing what we think, what we observe. Honestly, a lot of this is going to be like hashing out things that Kendra and I are currently mulling over of how will we navigate these things. So I don't want to put on this facade or pretend that today's conversation is me and probably you presenting all these answers, but rather just opening up a conversation. And hopefully for our listeners, it will be helpful for you to start mulling over these conversations. If you have kids already, conversations maybe you can start having. If your kids are grown, we'll have some conversations about once they're no longer small children, but once your children are adults, we'll get in that as well. So I think there should be something for everyone in here to learn. And again, Kate and I are learning right along with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear more about what you and Kendra are talking through. Obviously, you've got four. I just have one. So see what little bits I can take from this and start working on with Jameson.
It is funny once when you're a kid, your perception as your parents is they've, as far as you're aware, they've always been parents. In your entire life,
Yeah,
they have been parents. And as an adult, what you realize is you indeed have not always been a parent. And it was a few weeks ago, I was talking to our kids about how when Kendra and I met, they're like, wow, you and mom haven't always known each other. Like, no, we haven't. So this perception of your parents have always been parents, or you recognize that you're learning. I've never done this before. I've never. My oldest, his name's Atticus. Atticus turns 8 in a couple of weeks. I've never had an 8-year-old. It'll be the first time I've had an 8-year-old. So I'm always learning. And
yeah,
so again, I think that's one of the fun things and hard things about parenting. It's also sobering. This is not a test trial. I don't have 4 kids to practice on and then, all right, I think I got it down. Let's start afresh with a new bunch. This is it. There's no test trial with this.
yep,
I'm doing my best.
yep, yeah. I laughed because I thought you were gonna say which you basically did. Is it you as a kid? It kind of seems like you think your parents just have it all together. They have it all figured out, but in reality, now as a parent, it's like we're like scrambling and winging it all the time. Making our
Yeah.
best guess with what our next move should be here.
Oh yeah. It's I'm I do my best. Sometimes I make it up as I go. Sometimes I have a good idea, but that's it's part of parenting. We've never done this before.
Yep.
Uh, and I think a lot of parents have regrets later on in life. That wasn't something I was anticipating talking about today, but maybe we will get into that is regrets that I've heard a lot of people voice regarding money and their kids and their marriages. Maybe we'll get into that later in this conversation. Well, again, just to lay out the conversation today, I don't have any fun statistics, but I want to talk through having conversations with your children around money. And that starts with when they're little, all the way to adult children. And we'll follow it through a that lens of raising your kids. At what point do certain conversations happen? And also follow that theme of these conversations. And there's again like money before marriage, finding out when should you have conversations about money with your significant other before you're married. We're posing ideas, but we don't have it all figured out. Well, I guess we'll start off with that. Is I would I think we would both agree that you should have conversations with your children about money at some point in life, be it when they're
Hmm.
little, when they're teenagers, or when they're adults. It's inevitable that will come up. Would we agree on that?
Yep. I agree 100%. I think I
Okay.
think
That might sound like an obvious question, but if we agree that it should come up, then cool, we have a starting ground. All right, then the
yep.
next part is, well, when should it come up? So at what age is it appropriate to start talking to your kids about money? And do you talk to them about money in a general sense, and or do you talk to them about your money? And when is that appropriate? And how open should you be? Do you have any thoughts there? Again, I'm not pretending to have the answers. Like, oh, at 4.5 is when you start doing this. Like, what do you
Yeah.
think, Cade?
Yeah, going into this, I didn't have necessarily a strong opinion. I did find when I was doing some research, there was a report that was done, or a study, I guess, in 2016. It was called the Building Blocks to Help Youth Achieve Financial Capability. That report said that middle childhood, which they classify as age 6 through 12, it's a period when youth acquire foundational knowledge that forms their financial habits and norms, including healthy money habits and basic rules of thumb for managing finances. So that would point towards like really kind of getting into the, I guess, getting a little bit more specific around age 6. But that report also said that early childhood, which they say is age 3 to 5, there's a lot of development around executive functions, which includes self control and problem solving. So, yeah, my answer would be based off of that alone is like, okay, start introducing really basic, healthy money habit type things in the age range of 3 to 5, and then really maybe get more. I would say probably age 3 to 5 is more like little games and related to money, but not really money. And then maybe age 6 through 12 is where it maybe is more impactful to have more realistic money scenarios thrown at them.
I would argue that we could even break this up into two types of conversations, and that goes back to our initial first episode conversation about what is money. We had this more
Mm.
qualifiable than a quantifiable side of things, and money conversations with your kids. Do you when they're 3 years old, do you introduce them to your budget spreadsheet? Do you start talking with them about the stock market and things like that? That's one side of money. But then even just like what is money on the more qualified side of things, like how
Mhm.
you or your family uses money, the perception of money, things like that. So, for instance, our kids. It was a few years ago. I'd say probably 2 or 3 years ago. We went. So my right now we have 4 kids, and right now they are 7, 6, 4, and 2. So this was when Adeline was a newborn. So this was 2 years ago, this past summer. Okay, so about two plus two and some change years ago. So our oldest was 5. So we were at what, 5, 4, 2, and newborn. Okay,
Mhm.
so we went on a family vacation to Telluride, Colorado. Great vacation. We spent at that point we spent more on a vacation than we I think had at any other point in our life. We got a really nice house and we ate out and we got ice cream a couple times a day and just really enjoyed it. It was amazing.
Mhm.
The kids loved it. It was the first time the kids had seen mountains. It was one of the first times they had all like some of them. It was the first time they flew on a plane, and we just made a whole thing of it. It was amazing, and everyone loved being in Colorado. And the kids wanted to stay there. And we should move to Colorado. We should spend more time. We should get a house in Colorado. Mom and Dad, why don't we live in Colorado? Why don't we come here more often? It was amazing. We get back to Texas, and it's like 1,000 degrees out, and the town we live in, a lot of people drive golf carts around because it's a smaller town, and not 2 days after we get home from Telluride, we're driving and a really nice golf cart pulls up next to us. I mean, it's got like 4 rows and it's leather seats and a nice sound system. And it was like, that's a really fancy golf cart you got there, buddy. And we had a golf cart too at that point, and it was jankety. It had come with the house we bought, and it was a golf cart that you would buy to play golf on, except for it was a golf cart from like the 80s. And it had a pirate sticker on the back. I thought that was sort of cool. It was a clunker. There were many of times we'd be on a family golf cart ride around the neighborhood that I would end up pushing the family on the golf cart to make it to finish up getting home. Uh, Anyway, so we're driving, this really fancy golf cart pulls up next to us, like tens of thousands of dollars. And the kids say, "Wow, Dad, we should get that golf cart." And instead of me saying, "No, that's dumb," or "Yeah, let's do it," or "We can't afford it," or anything like that, I responded with, "Well, guys, we only have so much money. Would you?" And we just got back from a great vacation. If you had to choose, would you rather go to Colorado next summer and for the other summers, or would you rather stay in New Braunfels where we're at and just get a golf cart? And they all said, "Oh, I'd rather go to Colorado." So in that time, I took the opportunity to help them start navigating the fact that you make decisions. You know, this whole thing of you can have anything you want in life, you just can't have everything you want. So helping them assess one, what's important to you. So we could talk through the values conversation. Like, okay, we value spending time together as a family. And a goal with that would be we want to spend at least X amount of time per year on a family vacation. So the value is family time, the goal is vacation, the decision is money for vacation or money for a golf cart. We can't do both. And then finally taking action is, well, we're not going to get the golf cart and we will go on the vacation together. So helping them start navigating those things, understanding trade-offs and opportunity costs. I think those are lessons you can start teaching your kids early on is proper decision making in context of what is important to you. You know, helping them understand delayed gratification, helping understand opportunity cost. So I would pose you don't have to be old and your kids don't need to understand investments and markets and things like that to understand general trade-offs and money decisions. Unfortunately, ironically, most people don't understand that stuff. Most adults don't understand that. That's why I've had so many people say, Jim, I wish we could do X, Y, and Z, but they don't when they ironically they would have the money for it, yet their money goes towards other things because they never stop to ask what's important to us. They have not considered the opportunity costs, the trade-offs. So I would say that that's a really good start place you can start teaching your kids early on is navigating decisions and pointing out, hey, what do you think about this? Later on, you can lay the how of investing and saving and spending and all that, starting off with considering how do you make decisions well. That was a ramble. Sorry, Cade.
No, that was really good. I can't. I don't have a similar story to share with how we've navigated something with Jameson, but I think your example is really powerful. At an early age, I think you said Atticus, your oldest, was around 4 at that time, and that was something that even as a 4-year-old, the way that you broke that down, you laid it out in a way where he understood. Like, okay, here's how I navigate this decision. Here's how Dad has decided, like, what is more important to us as a family, and it started with, hey, what do we value? And we value family time, and but I would rather spend our family time on a vacation in Colorado than riding around in a super fancy golf cart. So just recognizing that uh, money is limited, and you with every dollar you spend, you're casting a vote for what ultimately matters to you and what's important. So that's a really powerful lesson.
Something I'm sure if anyone who has kids will can be sympathetic to this statement. But our kids, anytime we go anywhere and there's things for sale, they'll say, "Oh, Dad, can I have that? I want that toy. I want this thing." They're always asking for stuff. And instead of I don't want to lie to my kids. So I don't want to say like we can't buy that. We don't have money. We can't afford that because we can afford the goofy toy at the grocery store. Like I can afford it. Most people can afford that if they wanted to. So I'm not going to tell my kids I can't afford that. Instead, my response has come to be, and Kendra and our response is, we don't have money for that. Like, all right, yeah, like I want the thousandth Hot Wheels car. We don't have money for that. We have money for other things, but again, like we don't have money for that. You're trying to demonstrate, and I don't just leave it at that. Not every. I don't sit down and have this long thought out conversation every time my kids ask for something. I'd run out of time in the day. But we regularly have that conversation of why do I say we do not have money for that, and that's because of going back to that bigger conversation of what is the money for. So then when they ask me on the spot, Dad, I want this thing, I can say we don't have money for that, and they understand what I'm communicating. So I'd argue that's probably a good. I think it's a good response. Maybe it's not. Maybe there's a better response.
Yeah,
I should start saying.
no, I think it's a great response. I feel like right now where we're trying to share some of those same, I guess, ways of thinking with Jameson. He's 2, right? So I mean, how much can we really do? But we do it more around like time, right? He doesn't necessarily understand money yet, but again, what you do with your time obviously communicates what is important to you, just like what you do with your money is going to communicate what's important to you. So like if we've got 30 minutes before bedtime and Jameson really wants to do, go ride his bike outside, or he wants to do, whatever else, we try to break it down of like, okay, we don't have time for all these things, and trying to help him understand, like, which thing is more important to you, is where you'd want to spend your last 30 minutes before you have to go do bath time. So I think it can start with things like that, because like I said, time and money both are going to communicate what's important to you. They're going to have a lot of there's going to be a lot of overlap there with how
Yeah.
kids learn.
Yeah, again, time and money, I would say, are the two very large currencies in what you value, like communication of what you value. Again, something I mention all the time is, if show me your checkbook and your calendar, and I'll tell you what your life is communicating you value. Another reason I want to go back here is, the kids say, "Dad, I want that." I don't usually say we can't afford it. Maybe we can't, and if that's the case, I'll tell them like we can't afford that. But I don't want to tell them all the time that we just can't afford something. One, because I don't want to lie to our kids, and also I don't want to teach them. I don't want them to think that we're impoverished and teach them this like mindset of like, oh my goodness, it's like that'd be sort of the time equivalent of, hey, Dad, I want to go play outside for 30 minutes before bed, and you tell them like, oh, you're going to die in 30 minutes. Like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
So why is that your response? You're teaching them to make a decision based off of a false premise. So instead of just trying to get them to be quiet, I'm trying to instill a lesson there of like, we don't have money
Mhm.
for that. Not we can't afford it, because then you're teaching them, one, it's untrue typically, like for a little toy at the store. It's a false premise. Then two, you're teaching them to make a decision. Maybe you're teaching them a wrong lesson. Maybe you're not teaching them a lesson that you could, or maybe you're teaching them the wrong lesson. And the lesson there is like, you should be fearful of how you spend your time, because maybe you're going to die at any second, or maybe you should never spend money on anything because you're always broke. And you're teaching your kids, it's like going back to our last episode, talking through like money scripts. Maybe the money script you're giving your kids accidentally is, you're always broke and you can't afford anything, and money can't be spent on anything you enjoy. And that's not the lesson I'm not trying to teach my kids you can't afford anything and you never can enjoy the use of your money, but rather you need to consider what's really important to you and make sure your money is aligned for those things, what you value. So that's, I think, a more valuable lesson. And that is something you can start when they're young. And of course, you can get deeper and deeper conversations as they age. And again, unfortunately, I think a lot of people have never had even the basic conversation or thought process there of, what do I value in life? Therefore, you have tons of people out in life who are not even using their money for what they truly value, because they never stop. They just react like, oh, I want that toy, so I will buy it. They never stop to ask, what else could I do with that money that's going to go to that toy instead? And I'm hoping to instill that in my kids from when they're 2 to when they're 10 to when they're 20 and then when they're 50. So
Yeah.
it's building blocks here.
Exactly.
What
Yeah. Just.
about I guess the more, again, I guess we could stay on that vein of the qualified side of things. So having those conversations, inviting your kids in those conversations with you, like maybe you and your spouse, as you navigate that, is again like, yeah, Dad, I want that toy. We don't have money for that right now. Or, Dad, we want that golf cart. Well, we would rather go on this vacation. Actually open those conversations up to our kids. Those are conversations we have, and we've started inviting our kids to be part of those. Is this openness of how we use money? So that type of house that we own, the types of cars that we drive, the vacations we go on, the way we give our money, the way we spend our money, what we eat. We have those conversations with our kids. So, for instance, we eat really healthily. I would argue Kendra is a very big proponent of like eating organic and like raw dairy and aka expensive food. And she values that because she believes it is directly linked to health. So she values health. She believes that these types of foods align with health. Therefore, we use our money to purchase that because health is important to us and our money is going to communicate that. So we have that conversation with our kids of, well, we buy these groceries, we buy this food because of this, or we live in a more modest house, we drive modest cars because of this. So bringing in those conversations, something that I think is really neat is Kendra's told me this several times, a story when when she was, I think, in middle school, her parents built a new house. And the part of town they lived in a part of town that was a suburb that was like middle, maybe upper middle class suburb area where they built their new house. But they were really involved in a church that was like lower middle class, or maybe like, I'm not, it wasn't like the projects, but it was definitely lower middle class and possibly below. Okay.
Mhm.
And they regularly had people over to their house. So like youth group events, and stuff like that. Or a lot of times they would have like the youth pastor and people live with them for prolonged periods of time. They would have gatherings for Bible studies at their house. And anyway, so Kendra, when she was in middle school, they built this new house. Kendra was upset with them because she wanted a more decadent house with a double
Mhm.
spiral staircase and a grand entryway and all that stuff. And they were building something more modest. It was sizable, but modest. And I think a really neat thing her parents said was, Kendra, most of the people who come to our house have never been in a place like that. And we don't want them to, we don't want their perception of us to change when they come here. We don't want them to feel uncomfortable. We want it to be welcoming, but we want it sizable enough that we can host, but also welcoming and comfortable for anyone to come into. And I think that's really honorable and really neat. And the fact that
Yeah.
that's a conversation you can have with your kid. That's a conversation you can have with them at middle school. Those are conversations that we have with our kids at their ages right now. Again, 7, 6, 4. Like these are things that we talk. I'm not having this conversation with Adeline. She listens in, sort of, maybe. But these are conversations we have. And I think that's really healthy is how Kendra and I view financial decisions, the reason we drive our cars, the way we assess these things. One, so they can see us modeling healthy dialogue around money, understanding what we value, because it directly impacts them. So helping them like mold what we think they should value in life. And then also allowing them to get insights to how we make decisions financially stemming from what we value and our goals are for our family.
Yeah. I think number one, that story is incredible. I think that's a deeper level of thinking than most people go to before making a decision with anything, probably, much less a financial decision. And I think, like you said, just having open dialogue with your kids about how and why you're making the decisions that you're making so that they can learn to think deeper and consider trade-offs and consider opportunity costs of what decision they're making. Whether I know this is about money, but whether it's about money or not, there's a lot of value in learning like, hey, let's pause, let's think about the decision we're making and all of the areas that this decision is going to impact rather than like you said being so reactive like most people are.
Yeah, you can put your hand on that hot stove if you want, and maybe it looks neat for whatever reason, or you can reach up on the stove to grab that cookie, but it will burn your arm because of this. You need to understand the impact of a decision and every factor that goes into that decision that you will need to make. That's what we're doing as
Yep.
parents, largely is helping our kids make good decisions. Now I hear people say like, "Oh, I don't want to teach, I need to teach my kids how to think and not what to think." It's like, "No, I definitely want to teach my kids what to think. Why would I not want to teach my
Mhm.
kids what to think?" But also,
Yeah.
I want to teach my kids how to think. If you only teach your kids what or how to think and not what to think, that could be sort of odd. And I would say that it's important to teach them how, but everyone teaches their kids what to think. And maybe you would say again, I'm a Christian. Maybe you'd say it's like, oh, you're brainwashing your kids. Well, if you have a different point of view, I would say that equally, if you're teaching your kids nothing, then you are leaving that void there, and you are teaching them something. Anyways, and to say I'm to only teach your kids what to think, but you're not teaching them how to think, you're going to do this massive disservice because one day they'll get out of your household, or maybe you're just gone for an hour and they just make goofy decisions because they don't have that ability to process. They don't have the conviction. Well, one, you have to instill the conviction, and then two, you have to teach them how to think through things. So even if they have a conviction and they have options, they may not still understand how to tie that conviction with their options and how to assess the framework of thinking through things. So one, teaching them and instilling convictions, and then that would be the what to think sort of, and how to adopt those thoughts on their own. And we'll talk about that in other conversations. Is how do you set goals and adopt things as your own thoughts? But then also, how do you navigate the framework there? And those are the two things we're trying to do with our kids. Or largely the two things is instilling our kids with values and then helping our kids navigate this framework of, okay, if we have this value, how do we connect it with our actions? That involves decisions. And how do you make good decisions? Reach it for the cookie, you're going to burn your arm. You're making a trade off. Is that cookie worth a big burn on your arm? Probably not. Do you want the golf cart? Do you want a trip? So helping them navigate these trade offs and opportunity costs, I think, is is wildly important. And that's a large honor of parenting, is the what we've been trusted to do to help to raise kids to make these good decisions. What about on the like the more actual tangible side of things with money? I know our kids, sort of funny. I don't think I even did this on purpose or even did it. But like our kids, uh, Atticus, from when he was probably 5, he started having these stores. So they have these big building blocks, and he made his own little. It looks like a little storefront you would see like on a sidewalk in like a third world country, or a little booth made in a dense city. He has a little booth like that just in our
Mhm.
playroom. And he sells like he's recently gotten into crocheting, so he'll sell crocheted bracelets and necklaces. He made a crocheted jump rope the other day, so he'll sell that stuff. Or he collected it was hundreds of seashells at the beach, so he'll sell seashells. It's tough to say. He sells seashells from the seashore, and just other things. He'll save up and like, or birthday gifts. Not
Mhm.
birthday gifts. Someone said he's not reselling his birthday gifts. But maybe if he has the opportunity to collect those the parting gifts at a birthday party, everyone, all the kids leaves. I
Mhm.
don't understand that whole
Yeah.
thing. Like, why are we giving toys to the kids who come to the birthday? Isn't the prize to come to the birthday?
Yeah.
Small tangent. Our kids play sports, and I don't remember this as a kid. After every flipping game, every kid gets a treat. It's like, dude, the treat is the fact that you're playing baseball. Why you need a sucker to feel good about being here? You're playing a game. That's the treat, man. Where are we teaching our kids?
Interesting.
It's so, and I hate it. One, like, you want to give your kid a treat, give them the treat. Now you have to coordinate like who's bringing the snack today. They have to figure out allergies, and Debbie doesn't like to eat
Yeah.
that, and they don't like these
Yeah.
ingredients. Like, my goodness. And then the kids get upset because they don't have a good treat. You just got to play a game. That's a treat. We need to teach our kids
Yeah.
that to be thankful for the fact they just got to play a game. Anyways,
Mhm.
drives me nuts. That sort of goes to this birthday party thing. So Atticus, a lot of times will do with these birthday party going away party favor things. It's like, I don't want these. So then he'll stick it in his store and he'll sell it. Now I will say that I'm his primary customer. Kendra and I make it a point. He tries to get me in there every day, but I tell him I only shop on weekends. But yeah, he likes to sell
That's
things. And
awesome.
now Asher and Arlo, they also have stores. I'm a big fan. I buy their massages. Atticus, he's upped his prices. Unfortunately, he used to sell massages for a penny a minute, and man, they're pretty good for a 7-year-old. Man, I would buy so many massages until Kinder made him think through that he should up his prices. I was hoping he could learn the lesson the hard way by really really learning it, not her manipulating the prices. Um, and then Asher started selling massages, and he sold them for so Atticus upped his prices. Asher started selling them for less. I would only buy them from Asher, forcing Atticus to drop his prices, and then I started buying them again. So teaching these like supply and demand, I think it's pretty good.
Oh, that's amazing. That's
So anyways, our
amazing.
kids, and like it's neat to see like they have their money, and they save and they buy things from each other. Literally, as I walked out the door today to come to work, Atticus was selling some stuff to Asher from his store. And then it's neat though, like they'll do that, but then Atticus will go to the store together and he'll buy a gift for Asher because he knows that Asher wants it. And he understands that
Oh,
I
that's
worked hard
cool.
for this money. It's really neat to see, but they're also like taking on money.
Mhm.
A few months ago, Asher had a store. I think it was Asher, maybe Arlo. It was Asher. Asher had a store. His grandpa Poppy was over, and Poppy wanted to give him $1, and Asher said, "I don't take dollars. I only take Bitcoin." I thought it was pretty funny. So I do know part of this is because they pick up on me. But yeah, just having these
It
conversations with your kids about money, about budgeting, stuff like that. That's where I mean, it was a week ago today. Atticus and I, we were driving at night, and he said, "Dad, why does Bitcoin have what gives Bitcoin value?" And I thought it was a pretty good question for a 7-year-old. And we talked through supply and demand. We also talked through the backing from energy. We talked through debt and how the U.S. dollar is really backed by debt, and it being a fiat currency, obviously the enforcement of the U.S., but ultimately backed by debt, by people being forced to buy U.S. debt. We talked through all these things. And of course, I didn't go into like the petrodollar system and stuff like that with him, but I would tease the conversation out that would lead to another good question. And it's really neat to see the questions our kids are starting to think through. Like, okay, well, why does Bitcoin have value? Why do US dollars have value? And we talk through money printing. And I pose that, if I could just create money out of thin air and be able to buy all his stuff up from him, would that be fair? Oh, well, no, that doesn't seem like it's fair. Well, that's how US dollar works. And I talked to him about the cancel on effect and this disproportionate advantages that some people have because of money printing. And yeah, it's you can have conversations like this. Again, this is a conversation I was with my 7-year-old. We've been having conversations like this since they were about 5. And this is aside from talking, we talk about budgeting, we talk about investing and saving, and those conversations will only pick up over time, I think.
Yeah. Well, I think you're having those conversations today because, like you said, you started these conversations when Atticus was 4 or 5 years old, and yeah, they some of the examples you've given were about specifically like what should I spend my money on, the golf cart or the trip to Colorado, but you're also you're showing him how to think and not be reactive to things, but pause and ask questions and understand like this decision I'm about to make is going to impact other things. And I think once you kind of go down that rabbit hole of uh, asking questions and trying to understand like what your decision is, what other areas your potential decision is going to impact, and it just leads you down this like, okay, well, you start to get really curious about how a lot of things work. And that's probably why that's happening. So you've taught him how to be a deep thinker and a
Yeah.
strategic thinker.
Yeah, they're starting to realize how things are connected. It's really
Yeah,
neat.
exactly.
I I think I was fortunate enough to grow up in a household where I was exposed to a lot of things financially. My parents weren't like having these crazy proactive conversations per se, but they also like they did a great job. And it was at home, it was at church, it was at school. I think I went through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University 5 to 9 times before I was out of high school. Like it was drilled in my head about like prudent spending and saving and debt. And I'm grateful for those basic lessons that most adults have never had. That was absolutely drilled in my brain from an early age. And again, I like that started off, I think, when I was pretty young and just was reinforced over and over again through like my senior year of high school. I went through Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University or whatever, like I think twice just that year, once at church and then once at school. So it was just over and over again, and I think that's necessary. Someone like me, I need to hear things a few times before I can learn it. But especially a kid, is just redundancy, repetitive, what are we going to call it? Is I think that's going to help you get in their brain. So giving them exposure, and sometimes there are lessons that's easier for the non-parent to teach. Especially, I'm not at this life phase yet, and hopefully our kids aren't like this, but statistically they probably will be. There are going to be certain lessons that's easier for the non-parent to teach. And that's where it's having other good influences in their life, someone else that you trust, close family friends, other family, uncles, aunts, maybe having good friends where it's like, man, they need to learn this thing, but they're not going to take it if they hear from me. They need to hear it from this other source and seeing what's around. I think that's really important as well. Yeah, that,
Yeah,
that was a conversation we had
there's
last. Our last conversation was about money scripts. Like when you saw things as a kid, you pick up these mini money scripts from your parents, but also maybe you pick up money scripts from things outside of your parents. Maybe it was another area. So understanding, hey, if your kids see the way that their rich uncle spends money, that probably is going to stick with them in some, not probably, it will stick with them in some capacity. So maybe you should allow that to be a conversation piece later on is, hey, did you notice maybe they mentioned how they always have new cars? Well, let's talk about it. Why do they always have new cars and we don't? Or why do they have a really old car and we have a new one? And what's allowed for that? Or why is that important to them and us? Allow that to be conversations.
Yeah, I didn't as a kid go through like Financial Peace University and do all these things. But I feel like my parents still did a really good job of teaching me value around money and how to think about money and manage money appropriately and making decisions with money and all that. Like I was more of the kid that kind of like Atticus, where I tried to turn everything into a little business. I had, lemonade stands every weekend at my grandma's house, and that was all like my money to keep besides paying my grandma whatever she had to pay for the supplies to make the lemonade. Like, so I understood that, and then I got to take
You
this
paid
money
your
home
grandma
and
franchise fees.
100%. Yep, yep. It was a I sold the business in 1998 for $4 million. No, but yeah, I learned a lot from stuff like that. Like when we did garage sales, I got to bring like some of my toys and things into the garage sale, and whatever of my stuff I sold, I got to keep. And then I managed the cash register and I negotiated with all the people that were in the garage trying to buy stuff. And so my mom would pay me like a little hourly rate or whatever for actually working in the garage sale, plus whatever I got to keep out of my stuff. And so I learned a lot about earning money. And then because I did those things to earn the money, I valued that money, and it wasn't like my money. My parents didn't give me an allowance of like, yeah, we'll give you $20 a week or whatever. The only time I had money was if I got it, from a birthday or whatever, or from a lemonade stand or garage sale or something like that. And so most of the time I was earning it, and that forced me to think a lot more about how I was going to use that money, whether I was going to save it for something, whether I just wanted to spend it on whatever. So I think there's a lot of value in just getting their hands dirty and like getting them involved in those types of things to learn how the real world works.
I was the same way. I was a kid from when I was as young as I can remember, selling stuff on the side of the curb. And I guess I wasn't a good marketer because I would just put up a sign that said junk sell because I was selling all of my old junk. Like when I was starting at 8, we lived on a relatively busy corner, and across the street was a gymnastics studio and karate studio. And a lot of weekends they would have tournaments. So I knew it was going to be a lot of kids across the street. So whenever there's a tournament, I'd hold a junk sale, and it was all of my old toys I didn't want anymore or whatever. And I would
Hmm.
sell stuff. It was great. Or I remember one time in 5th grade, I went to a retirement party, and they had a bunch of fishing lures as like the table decors. The guy who was retiring was really into
Hmm.
fishing. And after the party, I was able to collect all the fishing lures that were left over, and I took them to school the next morning and I sold them. And I marketed them as different, like keychains or backpack decor or sometimes fishing lures,
Hmm.
and I made money from that. Or in high school, my freshman year of high school, there was a Halloween party thing I went to, and this old lady made by hand these suckers that were the best suckers I've ever had, and no one ate them, so there were
Hmm.
hundreds left. So I packaged them up. I kept some individual, and I put some in sets of 5 and some in sets of 10. And the next 2 days at school, I sold suckers, and I made like $300 by selling suckers at school. So
Hmm.
yeah, it's just I don't know. I think from a really early age, I was instilled in me. Maybe that's my grandparents owned several successful businesses, and I was just exposed to business early on. Maybe that's why I don't remember them like drilling my head. Like grandparents didn't sit me down and talk about business. We would go to my grandparents' business, and a lot of my family worked there. So maybe I was exposed to it that capacity where it seeped in. Another neat thing that my family did was again through all this money stuff, and I could argue that this came at a bad time for me personally, but my grandparents did this thing where each of the grandparents would, or each of the grandkids rather, would be given a book called The Law of Success by Napoleon Hill. It's a giant book. There's a book called Think and Grow Rich, which is like the summarized version of The Law of Success. Anyways, each grandkid would read the Law of Success, and you got a year to read it. And the following year at Christmas, when all the family was gathered, you'd have to give a report to the whole family in front of them about what did you learn, what were your takeaways, and how are you going to apply it. And they would give you a
Wow.
sum of money afterwards that you had to invest and use for later on for delayed gratification purposes.
Mm.
Little lessons like that were I don't know of any other families that do stuff like that. That's really neat. Now, I would say I mentioned earlier, I think that came at maybe a bad time in life. That also coincided with that was my senior year of high school when I did that. And I was already really into money, and that put some fuel on the fire. I actually, after I finished the book, I reread The Law of Success because I was really into it, and I read other Napoleon Hill books, and I became obsessed with money. I would argue that I was probably like in love with money, and that's really bad.
Hmm.
That led to a lot of greed, and fortunately, like it's no longer there. This bad view of money, but say that did open up a view of money, of business and entrepreneurship and opportunities. So just having those conversations, open your kids up their horizons, like hey, school, career choices, business. again, teaching your kids how to think through things, learning about themselves, learning about options. I think that's what a lot of childhood and even your 20s is about, is learning about what's available out there and also learning about yourself. What do you enjoy and not enjoy? What are you good at? What are you bad at? What are your passions? Should you always follow your passions? Do you follow what you're good at even if you're not passionate about it? Like these are good conversations to have
Yeah.
that you should be having with your kids regularly. Let's
Yeah.
go into some more taboo stuff that I don't know the answers to this. I'd be curious.
Okay.
Let's talk about kids with allowances. So,
Mm.
should you give your kids an allowance? If so, how do you decide how much that is? Is it dependent on chores they do? Do they just get a set amount? Do you not give them an allowance? I know, like, some families don't give allowance. They don't pay a weekly or monthly amount. They don't pay based off of things done. You just contribute to the family. But, if you want to go to the movies, mom or dad gives you, I don't know how much a movie costs anymore, $15 to go to the movie.
Yeah. At least.
Yeah, I never go to a movie. What do you
I
have
don't
any
know.
opinions there? Or what I don't I honestly I don't think I have an opinion. I am so my parents tried a lot of things. Do you have an opinion, or I'd be if yes or no, but I'd also be curious to hear just like what it was like for you growing up and your takeaways from that.
Yeah, I can't say that I have a strong opinion. I have a thought. I would think that not not just having an allowance that they get regardless of what they're doing, whether they're contributing to the household or sitting playing video games all day. I don't think just a I don't think an allowance without some kind of effort to earn that makes sense. Because I think I would think the purpose of giving a young kid some kind of an allowance would be to teach them to create healthy habits around money. And I don't think you're going to value that money the same if it's just given to you versus if you earn it by doing something. For me, I didn't have an allowance, but the money that I got outside of like birthday money was through, like I said, I had a lemonade stand or money that I made from selling some of my things at a garage sale. I don't remember what year it was. It was like maybe like seventh grade ish, sixth grade, seventh grade, where Livestrong bracelets became really popular. And I remember buying a bunch of Livestrong bracelets online for like 50 cents a piece and then selling them at school for $2 a piece. Like that was like there was a handful of kids that sold Livestrong bracelets. Stuff like that. And I always felt like I was doing something to earn whatever money I had. So maybe that's because maybe my thought, again, I don't have a strong opinion on it because there may be studies that show that I'm completely wrong, but my thinking is they should probably earn it in some way, shape, or form.
What about like if you wanted to go to a movie with friends when you're in eighth grade, but you didn't have money for it? Would your parents give you the $6 for a movie? Or it's too bad you need to go sell. You didn't sell enough lemonade last week. How was that handled?
Yeah, yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, I guess they did. So I didn't have to use my garage sale money, or because I probably didn't have garage sale money to go to the movies. They paid for that kind of stuff. So I
Yeah,
guess
I guess
if
by
we
like eighth
consider
grade,
that
you're
as
not
part of
cute
an
enough to get.
allowance,
Yeah, like eighth grade, you're not cute enough to get lemonade stand money anymore.
no,
There's
definitely
some kid
not.
out there selling lemonade that no one wants.
That's why I flipped to Livestrong bracelets, and
Yes, you couldn't play the cute factor. Interesting. We how my parents did things. I think they tried a lot, and we're not here yet. I guess we could maybe we're maybe we're not there yet because we've chosen not to do anything, and that is a decision. My parents did a few things. I remember there was a point when I was a kid that there were certain things you just had to do, but then there are other things that, all right, if you mow the front yard, you get X. If you mow the backyard, which is smaller, you get Y. If you taking care of your own room is your responsibility, but if you mop the floors throughout the house, or if you, I don't know, whatever these things, and you would get little stipends for those things. And
yeah,
my mom and dad had a chart on the fridge. You'd mark off what you did, and you would get X dollars per week for doing those things. You could do that, or maybe some families like you get $10 a month. I don't know the inflation adjusted numbers for normal allowances anymore, but you get $10 a month and you're just expected to contribute. You're here as you're part of the family. I don't I don't get paid. I don't get paid to do the dishes. No one gives me money to do dishes. I do the dishes because I'm part of the family. Why should you get paid? Well, my kids also can't have a job. I'm trying to teach them to learn to work. Like, these are arguments I have in my own mind. Or do you not even give them money a weekly basis? You just, if you need it, I will help. If we deem it necessary or good or whatever, then yes, I'll give you the money to go and buy that thing or go do that thing. Which again, we could it's like, well, what are you teaching them there? Like, no one, money doesn't just magically appear in my pocket because I want to go to a movie with friends. I had to earn it in some capacity. So are you indirectly earning it by contributing to the family? But if you do it directly by contributing to the family, are you telling them that they only contribute to the family for a financial reward? Then we could argue that you're then incentivizing only contributing if you're financially motivated rather than just doing what's right because you're part of a family. This is here's what we're doing right now. And again, my kids are young. So right now we have everyone clean. Like, Kendra and I do most of the cleaning, obviously, but most evenings or weekends or whatever, like tonight, I'll get home to an absolute wrestling match. It's going to be chaos. But I'll get home. The house will be a disaster. And we'll just roll up our sleeves and I'll get to it. Ken and I will hop on dinner and dishes and everything. And I'll holler at the kids like, all right, y'all need to clean up the schoolroom and the playroom and the living room and pick up all your toys. And they just do it. I don't pay them afterwards. Now, there are sometimes maybe the house is a little bit messy and two of the kids are playing really well on their own. They're off doing their own thing. And I'll grab Atticus and say, hey, buddy, if you clean up all the toys, I'll give you 50 cents. And at that point, I would pay him to do it because he's the only one cleaning. His brothers aren't doing it. And maybe I just don't, usually I would say everyone needs to clean, but I enjoy our kids playing well. And I want to take advantage of the quiet and not disrupt that. So instead of disrupting that to make everyone clean, I'll just motivate Atticus. And in a sense, that's unfair because he didn't make all that mess. I'm not making everyone else clean. So therefore, I will subsidize that cleaning responsibility with payment because it is in a sense unfair. That's how we are handling this right now. I don't know what it's going to look like. Again, that's why I started this conversation of I don't have the answers per se on how to execute all this stuff, but I'm sure there's plenty of good books out there that will give their opinions, and I'm sure they're all differing, just like baby books. Everyone's like, oh, you should let your baby cry. And the other one's like, if a baby cries, it's going to ruin it. It's like, well, maybe you're both wrong or right. I don't know.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts
I'm
there,
sure
Kate?
all, I'm
It's all
sure all those books
speculation.
were I'm sure all those books were written by parents that were just kind of winging it while they did it anyways, and they're just sharing opinions on what worked for them. It doesn't mean that's what's going to work for you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're not going
what
to
you're
really
doing
know.
sounds good.
You're not going to really know like the impact of your parenting until your kids are like adults, until they're probably, I would say, in their 30s. Maybe I'm saying that because I'm in my mid 30s, but you're probably not going to know like how you did raising your kids until they're fully formed adults, until you've had enough time to see how are they navigating decisions as an adolescent, as a teen, as a young adult, as an adult. How are they choosing their spouse or not? How are they raising their kids? Then you start seeing it. At that point, they've flown the coop. Like, yeah, it's
Yeah,
interesting. Being a parent's very interesting.
yeah. Like you said, it's
Uh,
not you don't get a free trial run. This is your chance, and then you'll just see how it worked out in the end.
of course, we could tie in like should you have your kids work, and if so, at what age and how much should they work, and all of that. So, I mean, I worked odd jobs as a preteen. I had a full time like a summer job as soon as I could at like 15 or 16, making like $5 an hour. Um, I had jobs all through high school. I worked some during college. I had friends that worked a lot more than me. I had friends that like they had to start paying room and board when they could have a job, like to their own house. I had friends who never had to work. Kendra never had a job. Her parents, her Kendra's brother had a job because he wasn't a good student at school. Kendra never had a job because she had a 4.0 GPA, and her parents said, "Well, you're taking your job of school seriously. Thus, that is your job. Don't go get one scooping ice cream. This should be your job." And I don't have an answer there. I think I do like the idea of kids working and having a job. As far as like how much should they work and what's the purpose of it? Is the purpose for them to make minimum wage? Is the purpose for them to learn a skill? Is the purpose for them to learn to work? Like, again, that's something I'd have to mull over and like think through. Like, what is the actual value they're receiving through working, and are there trade offs? If they're working, that's less time to do. Maybe you want them to learn the piano or study at school, or maybe at their work, the place they work, there's actually really bad influences, so therefore it's not worth it. Maybe there's great influences. Like, yeah, what do
Mhm.
you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think you said Kendra's parents had her basically treat school like a job because she had a 4.0, right? Yeah, that's kind of what my situation was. Not because I had a 4.0, I was not that smart, but I
You
was
gotta
I
take
was a
you gotta treat
golfer.
that 1.6 as a full-time job, buddy.
Yeah, I do. No, my my skill was golf, and so my my parents had me basically treat golf like a job. It worked out because I ended up playing golf in college on a full scholarship. So I guess all those years that I spent just all day long, every day at the golf course, it there was value there somewhere.
Yeah,
Once
way
I
way
got to
more value
college,
than $5 an hour flipping burgers.
absolutely, yeah, and a lot more experiences. Like there's traveling to tournaments and all the people that I met and all the like you learn a lot and as an athlete and so yeah, I never had a job in high school, in college. Like my full job was golf. Now I feel like I I wish I had a job like even if it was something super part time. I think where I would have gotten value out of it would be I would have seen what the real world was like because like golf as a job is you're playing a game. Like, but I treated it like a job, but I got to play at the golf course every day from, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. I'd go home for dinner and hang out, watch a movie, get up the next morning, do it all over again. That's a pretty stress-free way to live. I think if I had a job in high school where every night I had to go whatever flip burgers and I saw what it was like what the real world was like as far as earning money, it may have motivated me to take the privilege I had to play golf all day, every day. I may have taken that more seriously, and maybe golf would have taken me farther than it did. I had golf was incredible to me. Like I said, I got to do a lot, see a lot, meet a lot of people, and all of that. But maybe if I really understood, man, earning a living doing what most people do, having a 9 to 5 is really hard. I might have taken my role in golf a little bit more seriously. So I've thought about that a lot.
That's one of the interesting things about being an adult is reflecting on the opportunities that your kids have and wanting them to
Mhm.
take full advantage. Not that you're trying to like live through your kids, but you are able to look back on it now and say, like, no, please, you have this thing, like use it, enjoy it,
Mhm.
take advantage of
Yeah.
it. Yeah, just the thought of like working hard. It's everyone wants to think that they would have been, if I would have stayed with it, could have gone pro. The classic.
Yeah.
We would have, if
Yeah.
coach would have put me in, we would have won state. I met a guy a few years ago. It was a dad. His kid was on Atticus's t-ball team or whatever, and this dad, we were talking at practice one day, and he was saying his brother actually plays in the MLB. He's a Major League Baseball player, and he grew
Mhm.
up in the same town as I did playing Little League. I said, wow, so was your brother just always a phenom? Everyone knew from an early age that he was the best. And he said, actually, no, he was always mediocre. From he was a kid, he was mediocre. In middle school, he was mediocre. Even in high school, he was mediocre. He went and played college, still mediocre, but he just stayed with it. And now he plays in the major leagues. And I remember reading another story a few years ago. I think it was maybe Pepperdine or a school in Southern California. There was a guy who, same thing, mediocre kid, mediocre high school, made the team ish in college. I can't remember the exact, but he would basically like shag balls and like he wouldn't even throw BP, like batting practice. He would just like go and
Mhm.
gather balls up, and then he would every once in a while he'd be able to talk some players into like throwing him batting practice and like hit him some infield or outfield. And he did that, and finally his senior year he was able to play a little bit. Then he ended up playing minor leagues, and now he's in the major leagues. Like he just stayed with it, and that's an
Yeah.
interesting. That's like obviously not totally related to like being a busboy, but teaching your kids these lessons of like, dude, just work hard, do the little things
Mhm.
well, and stay at it. Like
Mhm.
those are good lessons. Like I would say that is more valuable than making $6 an hour. I could give my kids $6 an hour and they don't have to go do that. But is that the role? Is it for them to make? Maybe it is. Maybe
Mhm.
that is it. Like, nope, you don't get an allowance. You only get money if you go and you make it on your own. So the actual benefit is the actual money. But even then, is the benefit them? Is it the money or is it them learning to work?
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah, I don't think there's necessarily a right answer. I think a lot of this has to do with like your kids' personalities, but it could
Mhm.
be argued that maybe you're helping shape their personalities through this.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I think
Yeah,
this
it's
is,
tough.
yeah. Well, let's flip over for our older listeners. So these are still your kids, but they're out of the house now. And how do you have should you have conversations with your adult kids about money? And how do you get in these conversations? And what even conversations are we talking about? I have talked with tens of thousands of people about their money, and I have only had one person that comes to mind ever that during a conversation I said, wow, that is wrong. I had one person who said, you know what, I don't need to work hard or save because my parents have a lot of money and I'll just get it all when they die. It was almost this like gleeful hope for the parents to die. That's the only time I've ever seen it in the thousands of conversations I've ever had. But from my
Yeah.
experience, it seems that most uh, people are like approaching or in retirement steer away from having money conversations with their kids because they think their kids are going to respond like that anomaly did of like, I don't want my kids to, wait around for us to die. I want them to expect inheritance. I don't want things to get weird. I don't want X, Y, and Z. In my experience, that's not the norm. So I would argue that it would be generally and typically better to have conversations with your kids, adult kids, about money. Kid, do you have any thoughts there before we get to like specific areas? We can talk through like these types of conversations.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like in that scenario, where the maybe adult kid or even younger kid learned about a future inheritance and lacked motivation to do anything, they were going to fully rely on that inheritance. I feel like the miss there wasn't that you brought up inheritance. It probably goes farther back to like teaching them the value of working hard and having pride and contributing to society. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know that I would argue that the mistake wasn't informing your kid that they're probably going to inherit some money one day. It was going farther back than that.
Yeah, I'd venture to say maybe I'm wrong here, but probably some other misalignments that we would say, ooh, that's not
Sure.
healthy. That's
Yeah.
that's not good. Right, financial conversations that often come up, like, I mean, we can get into the specifics as far as planning around, like, okay, discussing inheritance, like financial
Mhm.
inheritance. Should you talk about that with your kids or your grandkids? Like, hey, when we pass away or before we pass away, we would like to give you this money, either now or later on. Or is that a conversation you wait to have or you never have? So a few things I've seen is, again, these are people who a lot of these people who are good relationships and money was not a problem, but yet still the money came in and caused division in the family. And be it because maybe the inheritance was split evenly and one child felt that they should be favored, or maybe one child was favored in the inheritance and they felt like that was not fair. So I would argue that, one, just from like an emotional healthy family perspective, instead of just never having that conversation and they'll hash it out when you die, you should probably have that conversation while you're alive. I think that what you want is for you to have a healthy family both now and for your kids, as a legacy.
Mhm.
So in regards to a legacy, you should probably help protect that by having these conversations proactively. And then you have the technical side of planning. Like, let's say your kids, one of your kids and their spouse, they work a job they do great work, but it just doesn't make much money. But you know that they're going to inherit $2 million when you pass away, or you're going to give them that money. That could drastically change how they are viewing being able to help their kids, saving for college, saving for retirement, decisions on, maybe your kids are never going on a vacation because they feel like they have to oversave for retirement. They don't have any money to save for retirement, but they never go on a trip because every dollar they have extra, they're saving for retirement. but you know that one day they're going to get 3 million, or well, to be consistent, they're going to get $2 million. So this whole time they could have gone on that trip. Like, I think you would want them to be able to. I'm not saying your kids should be like that weirdo who wants their parents to isolate all this money, so because of that they're just going to go traveling all the time. But if you've raised good, responsible kids, like, I think you would want for them, like, please go enjoy this, and don't worry, you'll have something there. I think it's good to leave it. I think it's good to leave an inheritance. There's a book in the Bible I read daily. It's the book of Proverbs. It's 31 chapters of this book, and there's things that it talks about, like how the righteous leave an inheritance for their children and their children's children. I think that's a good thing to do. And yeah, having that conversation, or maybe it's something along like tax planning, like intergenerational tax planning, talking about, goodness, business legacy. What happens to the business? There's classics, statistics about how, like, the ultra rich families, the first one was a builder, the second one was the grower of the wealth, and third generation was the person who really lost all the wealth. Like, it's probably because, like,
Hmm.
not healthy conversations intergenerationally. Yeah. So how do you discuss inheritance? At first, I would pose, like, it probably should be discussed. You should bring it up. You should have that in a healthy conversation. Maybe it's tough. Like, hey, we're going to give this sibling more because I like them more, or they make less money, they just need it more, or whatever. Like, or maybe, hey, we're gonna give it to everyone evenly because we love you all. And I know that this one person has more money, but they've made the decisions. We want to be fair. Like, just have those conversations. Don't wait for your kids to try to. Then the kids will simply be guessing, why did they do it, and that'll probably lead to
Hmm.
hurt. Again, maybe this is
Yeah.
not all the time, but again, I've had a lot of conversations, and almost every time, if not every time, it would have been better if these conversations were had versus less left to guessing.
Yeah. I would agree with that. My I guess the one thing I'll pose, or the one scenario, and maybe this is a one-off scenario, but if, like, let's say the parent shares with, in your example where there's their kids are working these jobs, they feel like they don't have enough for retirement, so all of their money's going towards savings. They're not taking the trip. If the parent knows that you're going to inherit 2 million bucks one day, and they decide to share that with these kids, and so the kids kind of adjust how they're currently living and spending, planning for this future $2 million. But, you know, some unexpected health issues arise for the parents or whatever, and by the time, or they live a lot longer than they were thinking, and now by the time that the parents pass away, either that 2 million is gone or it's way less than the 2 million they thought they were going to have. But for the last 15 years the kids were planning for, even though they were kind of doing it responsibly, they didn't quit their jobs and say, hey, we're going to get 2 million bucks one day, but they adjusted their lifestyle in what they thought was a responsible way. The inheritance never came, and now they are set back.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that comes with a few things. One, again, raising not bad kids, and then raising kids who are prudent and not now fully speculating on an inheritance. But then
Yeah.
also not just the need to have an initial conversation of, like, hey, you're gonna get $1 million or $2 million one day, but ongoing conversations of, hey, we're still alive. Hey, there's a obviously the market dropped a lot, and that's hurt us. Hey, we would love. I'm not saying you just give them their inheritance and say, like, hey, you're going to do these things. Maybe you. I'm not saying you have to do this by any means, but it's like, hey, I know y'all have talked about wanting on this trip, and y'all can't. Y'all do a great job working. You're doing a great job parenting. We would love to help y'all go on this trip. So you give them the $5,000 to go on that trip.
Mhm.
Like, will that $5,000
Yeah.
wreck your retirement? That's $5,000. If you want to keep a record of it, that's $5,000 less than they'll inherit. Okay. Like,
Yeah.
maybe that's the type of conversation. Like, how is that
Yeah.
handled? Again, it's probably having regular, like, not constant conversations, not being weird about it, but also having an openness of, hey, like,
Hmm.
let's just talk about these things. Remove this wall of money being taboo. Like, what we
Yeah.
can, what the things that are like taboo is, like, what? Politics, money,
Hmm.
religion. It's like
And
three areas that massively impact your life, and we're gonna pretend we can't talk about them. Like, okay, that's
hmm.
unhealthy. So we're gonna cover up unhealthy relationships by covering up, by not having conversations that could be unhealthy. Like, that's odd. So maybe we should get past that taboo and actually, like, have good. heck, that could be healthy. It's like, actually, how do we have conversations around things that are taboo in a healthy way? Like, maybe that helps actually get past these massive issues we have nationally and globally about not being able to talk about these things and have healthy conversations. How can we expect people to have healthy conversations, don't even know each other? We can't have a healthy conversation with your siblings or your parents. What have we done?
Hmm.
Because we've hid behind these
Yeah.
things, and now we pretend like they're the enemy, or you can't have a healthy conversation. And yeah, we sort of trained ourselves in that for generations. Yeah, have a conversation, man. It's helpful. It literally is more helpful, and probably having these conversations across the table from each other politically or religiously or whatever is probably healthier too.
Yeah.
All right, so discussing inheritance, financial. This is a really interesting one. Discussing non-financial inheritance. So it's like, man, like my grandparents. My grandparents have a lot of neat stuff. A lot of neat stuff from trips they've been on. They go to they used to go to a lot of estate sales. So they would get like really cool artwork from estate sales for like super cheap, because they would always they'd wait till the last day, and if the painting was still there, then they would get it for pennies on the dollar. My grandparents have a
Yeah.
whole lot of neat stuff. And it's like, wow, I have a ton of aunts and uncles and cousins, but it's like, well, how do you navigate that? Who gets the vase from Venice on that neat trip I've heard the story about 5 times? Who gets that? Because that's sentimentally valuable. Or maybe that painting. Like, let's say my mom was on a trip with my grandparents when she was 20 in Budapest, and there was a painting they have. Should mom get that painting, or is it first come first serve at the estate auction? Like, okay, non financially, or do you try to itemize every single asset and thing in your will? At what point is it just nuts? Like, I want I want this couch to go to this person, or do you just leave it open? So one thing I heard about a few years ago, it was in a podcast I was listening to. It was a family office. So a family office podcast. So it was this firm that works with uh, deca millionaires and billionaire families, just a handful of them. And they were talking about this. How do you, like, the non-financial things, like the family heirlooms, the stuff, how do you divvy it up? And they had a cool idea. Is this could be weird if you let it get weird. But what they did was, it was like Christmas, or at some point they knew the whole family was going to be gathering. Everyone got together, and everyone in the family was given 1,000 Monopoly dollars or something like that. And they had an auction. And if it's like, yeah, that painting is super important to me because I just think it's beautiful, or because it has a sentimental value, I'm going to put all $1,000 on that. Or I don't care about it. I'm going to put $100 on these things and I'll bid. I thought that was a
Hmm.
good idea, because you actually you're demonstrating that's important to me. And again, you're like, what you use your money for is a vote for what you value. So that can be a neat way. And you
Hmm.
do it while you're alive. And of course, like, you'll acquire some stuff, and maybe that vase that I put a big bid on gets dropped by grandma. Like, man, but you know, I think it's a neat way to even see from like the grandparents' perspective, like, wow, they do like these things, and like these things, even connecting those memories. I try to talk to my grandparents about these things. I love going to my grandparents' house and just walking around and looking at their little knickknacks. They have so many cool knickknacks, and looking
Hmm.
at them, but also asking about the stories, like, what's this from, and who is that person, and where did y'all get this, and what's the story behind this. And it's neat. Over the years, I found that a lot of the paintings that I really enjoy are things that my granny painted. It's like, wow, you painted that? That's amazing. She's like, oh yeah, I did that here. And I turned out like 10 years later, we were on this trip, and I didn't even know it, but this is what I painted, was this little coastal village. Like, wow. And like those, and you can't have these conversations, or you could, but like, this could be a way of having further conversations. So I
Yeah.
don't know. I would argue that, again, these decisions will be made one day, with or without you there. And maybe you don't have enough neat stuff. Maybe there's one kid, or maybe there's, two kids, or whatever, and it's simple. Maybe you have a lot of cool stuff, and it's like, how's this gonna be divvied up? Is it all gonna go, like, maybe no one wants it, and it'll all go to a estate sale or go to Goodwill, or maybe they're gonna
Mhm.
fight over it, or what? So I don't know, just get the creative juices flowing on how do you have these conversations. You have any thoughts there, Cade?
Yeah. Yeah, the when you were describing it before you brought up the Monopoly auction, that I was kind of thinking through some kind of a voting system, or just having a conversation. Like, I'm sure if the family all spent 30 minutes at Thanksgiving talking about, man, I love this thing, and well, I want that, and that painting is cool, and that should go to me. If people just sat and had a conversation about, what things carried more sentimental value to them than another, I'm sure everybody could arrive at some common ground and be super happy with the things they were going to end up with one day. And just taking the time to have that conversation, whether you do a make it fun and have a monopoly auction, which I think that's a really cool idea, or you just have a conversation about it. Either way, I think doing it that way versus just waiting until grandparents pass away and you get what you get, that's going to cause, yeah, I think I would imagine more tension, and um, more fighting than if you just took the time to handle it now.
What was there was something there's a show, I don't know if it was Seinfeld or someone, there's a show where like I want you to write your name on whatever, and like go and it's like secretly writing their name on stuff, like maybe you have your kids put sticky notes on it, but then you're around for another 15 years and now there's all your stuff in your house has your sticky notes on it or something.
Oh,
uh
that's
yeah,
funny.
and maybe you're like, man, this could be weird though. We're talking about when I'm dead. Well, you will die. We will all die one day. Like, why are we gonna pretend that's not gonna happen? At least, like, have good conversations. My goodness, like, unless you raise really odd kids or you just have really odd kids, like this should be good. Like, they love you and you love them. Like,
Hmm.
allow this to be a time of like, again, it's sort of like funerals. It's like, man, I wish they were here for this. It's like, well, then goodness, you probably should express that before they passed away. Like, let them know that you
Hmm.
love them. Okay, well then let's sort of try to do this in a sense as well. Like, let's facilitate these good conversations while everyone's around to have good, healthier conversations. It's probably a lot of
Yeah.
times better that way.
Yep.
Hey, we could get into this. Like, how do you help we sort of got into that. Like, how do you help your kids financially, your grandkids financially? Like, do you give your grandkids money? Do you pay for your kids, your grandkids, or your grandkids' college? Do you give the money to your kids to help pay for their college? Do you subsidize it? There's a technical side there. Like, maybe you live in a state that gets a state income tax deduction for a 529, but your kids and grandkids don't. Then where should you want a 529 plan? What state should the 529 plan be held in? Maybe the grandparents live in a state. Maybe the grandparents live in Texas where there's no state income tax deduction, but the kids live in New York where there is for a 529. So maybe I forgot which way I just said it. Anyways, maybe the grandparents give the money to the kids that they were going to put the 529, but instead they give to the kids, so the kids can then put the money to the 529 to get the state income tax deduction if there's all
Hmm.
the tax stuff about if they're phased
Yep.
out. But yeah, if they can get the credit, maybe, or the deduction, maybe they do. Like, how do you navigate that? And that's aside from the, do you help them? How do you help them? Do cars, college, weddings, house purchases, all these things, both for your kids and your grandkids. It's the classic one to spoil your, gosh, that's not even a conversation we've had. Like, as your kids age, spoiling your grandkids. How would you navigate that?
Hmm.
Buying things for them or helping out. But that's a whole can of worms. Let's go. The last part is sort of helping to set the expectations. Hmm. The the script is flipped. You spent your life raising these kids. You tears and blood and sweat and time and emotions and sleepless nights for decades was spent on helping them. Maybe as you've aged, now it's switched. Maybe you need their help. Should you broach that conversation? Maybe you need their help financially. Like, hey, we don't have as much as we hoped. We spend it all on helping you and your siblings, or we just never had it, or the market wiped us out, or whatever. Maybe you need to talk with your kids about moving in, or maybe it's not that severe. Maybe it's, hey, like, we need help with our health. Like, we have long-term care, or we don't want to live in a facility. We want to live with family. Do you have that conversation with your kids? Do you want your kids to bring that conversation up? Do you not want to be talked about? Should you ask your kids for their help? Like, do you not want their help with long-term care? So you go and you live in a facility, or you get outside help. If you want their help, should you ask them about it? Again, I'm not saying I have the answers, but I know my parents and my in-laws live 4 or 5 minutes from us. And I am so grateful for the way that my parents raised my brother and I, and I'm grateful for the way that Kendra's parents raised her and her brother. And I, like, God willing, I will, I believe we'll make it a point to stay here and help our parents in any way we can through their lives. And I think that's something, again, maybe they have $1 bazillion and they have a long-term care policy that will allow them to have the best care ever, way better than I could. Like maybe mom doesn't want me to give her a sponge bath or whatever. But just if you need help, maybe it's not a sponge bath, maybe it's like having a ramp built from their house, or just help with doctor bills, or just help physically. Like, it's just interesting to think through this life, how much you've poured out for your kids, and suddenly
Mhm.
you need something from them. Are you okay with having that conversation of, hey, I need help physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, financially? Yeah, the tables have turned. What does that look like for you? It's sort of a bummer way to end the conversation. Okay, do you have any thoughts there, or a better way to end it that's not as depressing?
Uh, I don't know. I think once you become a parent, you see how hard it can be, and you experience that just different level of love, and all the sacrifices you make for your kids, and just what all that entails. Until you are a parent, it's hard to really fully appreciate all that your parents have done for you. Um,
Would you say until you're a
and
parent, it's not apparent?
it's not apparent until you are a parent. Oh my gosh, only from you. But yeah, so I think once you've had kids and you realize, man, my parents did so much for me. At least this is my perspective, and it sounds like it's yours too. Is I would do anything that I possibly can for my parents if they need it. Now that kind of goes back to also like you need to have really thoughtful and transparent and open conversations, not only with your parents but also with your spouse, to make sure that like, hey, we're
Yeah.
both on the same page here. It comes back, I think, to just open, transparent, honest conversation. Because I've heard, and as I'm sure you have too, and anyone listening to this has probably heard of stories where aging in-laws move in, and it causes a bunch of tension, and now uh, the the marriage is teetering on the edge because of all the change that has happened with aging in-laws moving in. It was like, just stop and take the time to have a conversation about what this might look like, so that everyone's on the same page. And I feel like, especially, obviously I'm not to this point yet, so I can't speak to it with direct experience, but I would imagine as as a parent who now has adult kids that have kids and lives of their own, if you end up in a position where you need like financial support from your kids, um, it's probably a hard thing to ask for because you feel like a burden. It's like, man, you have your own life, your own things that you're working through. I don't want to be someone that's keeping you from achieving the things you want to achieve. Like that's the opposite of what a parent wants for their kids. But I think understanding that, assuming you did a decent job as a parent, your kids probably have a great appreciation for all you did for them. So not being afraid to, again, it keeps coming back to not being afraid to just have open and honest communication around where you're at, what you might need, and talking through how all of those decisions could impact not just the aging parent, but the kids that now are stepping into that more caretaker role.
Cade, we forgot to do this on our last episode, so let's do it now. So, bullet point, final thought, summary of conversation, or one thing you'd want to leave listeners with.
Because I think it keeps coming up over and over, I would say don't be afraid to have open and honest, transparent communication about anything. I think that will make any decision you're making or anything you're navigating that much easier.
Yeah, I would say, and this goes back to the beginning of the conversation with young kids, is having conversations that aren't just teaching, well, here's what it is. There are times when you say it's this way because it's this way, but trying to have those conversations, here's why we're doing things. And gosh, that's from when they're little all the way to when you have adult kids. Here's why we're doing this. Here's why inheritance looks like this, or lack thereof. Here's why. And helping understand the value side of those things. Kate, what about you have a fun question for me today?
Yeah. What if so? If you were not a financial planner, what do you think you'd be doing?
I could see it two ways. One, I would maybe see myself in like ministry in the church. I would enjoy that. If not doing that, then something related to creating and curating experiences. So, be it a uh, some sort of boutique resort or like very like experience related restaurant or cafe, something where you can really curate like memories, moments, experiences for people. I love that. What about yourself?
Man, uh, my answer is going to sound really shallow after that one, but I think I would be. You're not going to be surprised to hear. I would love to be a professional golfer. That'd be really cool. Yep.
Let's see. I always have silly ones that the kids ask me. Well, here let's go with it. Let's go with the easy one. I've been asking Adeline this, and her answers are hilarious. What's your? I asked you a similar one the other day, so I'll go there. Okay, what's your favorite drink?
Oh man, I'm so boring. I drink a lot of water. Like I'm not going to say water. I can't say it's my favorite drink. If I'm like really thirsty and want to enjoy something, it's probably going to be half sweet tea, half lemonade.
Okay,
An
is that called?
Arnold Palmer.
Arnold Palmer was a golfer, right?
He was, yes.
Okay, man, golf just fully infiltrating all parts of your life.
Yep, 100%. A golf shirt here, Masters T-shirt or polo. But yeah, I would say an Arnold Palmer. Iced coffee. Drink a lot of iced coffee, but I drink it really boring. It's I just coffee and milk. That's it.
Hey,
No
nothing wrong
fancy
with that.
flavors or anything. Um, yeah,
Sweet. Okay, thanks for hanging out. Thanks for talking about kids and money and the life of raising kids. And they're again like I've obviously my kids are still kids age, but they will always be my kids even when they're adults, or at least always be my children. So that's yeah, it's a good conversation. Thanks.
yeah, enjoyed it. Thanks, Jim.